I'm grateful to all of you for being here well before 5 o'clock. Thank you. I welcome all of you on behalf of IMC to meet with and to learn from Dr. Beheruz Sethna, who's out here. We're very lucky that we have him here today. This is the second in the series of sessions which will help you to, we will be offering to you, which will help you to understand what you need to do to become successful. Because we at the Chamber think one of our jobs is to make our members and society in general more successful than they are today. The first in the series was a lecture by the Managing Director of Cisco, who talked about disruption that's happening in this country on account of digital technologies. It's one thing to say digital technologies will disrupt, or you could actually be able to win on account of it by adopting it. And yet another thing to think that is a panacea. It's not a panacea for all our problems. At the end of the day, even to use digital technologies, we need people, and to lead people, we need true leaders. So which is why we thought up early in the series, we should have somebody who is supposed to be a great leader, who's established himself, who not only he doesn't preach leadership, he talks, he does and does it. So in Dr. Sethna, we have someone who has been a leader right from the very beginning. I happen to be lucky to know him from our IIT days. Even back then, he looked cut out from the rest as someone who's going to go places for various reasons. So he was the General Secretary of the entire student body. There are many more seniors and juniors there. He was the leader of the NCC. He was leader of everything. He was also, he used to write plays, direct plays, act in plays. He was everywhere. After IIT, he went to IIM Ahmedabad, where again he was elected student rep, and he did extremely well in academics. He went to the US. He got his PhD in record time. In the US, it normally takes, if you're good, it takes about 5 years. If you're really good, 4 years. And there are some good people who take 8 years. He got his PhD in 2.5 years. That's amazing. He joined the private sector. He worked with the Tata Consultancy Service for a little while, and then with the predecessor company of Procter & Gamble, and then went back to academics. He was the first ever Indian to become a president of a US university. Because he was clearly cut out from the rest, as I said, even as a student. They made him the president and made him retain that post for 19 years, although he tried to step down several times. At the end of 19 years, he said, enough is enough, let me concentrate on other things. He's often called to talk on TV and other fora on leadership. There's a lot one can learn from him. So in today's lecture, and I'm not going to talk about leadership because that's not my subject, it's his subject. So let him talk about it. But the thing is, there is something that is going to be there for each one of us to take home. Because this is practical experience talking, not reading from books and saying, okay, these are the 3 or 4 concepts, and if you follow these 4-point program, you'll become a leader. So Beheruz, I have to tell you about our chamber. It's got a long history. We're over 100 years old, 110 years now. In 1907, during the freedom movement, or early days of non-cooperation, because Indian businesses were at a disadvantage compared to the British, obviously, some pioneering business leaders decided to set up a chamber. And the list of people who have led this chamber is like a who's who of Indian business history. Because of what they did, we have a very good and lively chamber today. We have changed, we have moved with the times, and we have several expert committees on each issue to be thought leaders, to provide value to our members and to the government, advise them. We're not just going on lobbying. We try to be a chamber where the government and other bodies look to us for advice. So that's the kind of thing. And I'd like to tell you that two of our expert committee chairmen, and there are quite a few of them, are now union cabinet ministers. This is the only chamber which has two of our former committee chairmen as union cabinet ministers. So it's a chamber with high standing. So you're in the right place today and talking to the right audience. We've got very eminent people here in this audience, and they're all waiting to hear from you. So I'd like you to start, and I want to tell the audience that there will be time for question and answers, but we'd like to close the meeting officially at 6 o'clock. I know whenever Beheruz goes to speak, we have to put him out after 2.5 hours. Knowing that background, I've said we'll have the vote of thanks at 5:55, 6 o'clock we will close the meeting, period. After that, if a lot of you want to continue, we will continue this program. Unofficially, the meeting is over. But we want to start at 5, close at 5. So those who have other meetings to attend at 6 o'clock, they are free to leave. The rest can stay. Okay? With that, over to you, Beheruz.
Thank you. Thank you. Get forward a few steps. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But my belief and my talk is going to be on transformational leadership, meaning the unit that you lead has to be transformed in some meaningful way. I'm not going to define that way. You will define it in your own organizations. But it has to be transformed. Just using my own experiences as an example, and I will draw heavily from my example. Of course, I was president for a long time. 19 years is a very long time. But a lot of people who were familiar with the institution and came back even 3, 4, 5 years after that almost didn't recognize the culture. I'm not just talking of the buildings. There were lots of buildings, and I doubled the size of the square footage in my 19 years. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the culture. That's the kind of leadership that I am talking about. Now, if something is working well, I don't mean you come in and throw out everyone. I do not mean that at all. I mean that you work with what you have and you make it remarkably better and different. So I'm just going to focus on, as you see, my theme is the bold and humble leader. I believe in both things. You need to be bold and you need to have a lot of humility. I believe that. And I'll give you examples of that. And I'm going to talk to you about the lessons that I have learned. And sometimes I will tell you of what I think worked for me, and sometimes I will tell you of what I think didn't work. So if you like something that I wish had turned out differently, but it didn't. So I'm going to tell you about both successes and failures, okay? And we learn from our failures. So I'm not even embarrassed about that. I'm really not, because that's the process of learning. So a person who has never failed at anything in his or her life probably hasn't taken enough risk, okay? So that's my theme. These are the elements that I'm going to talk about. So I'll talk about all of these things, some briefly and some more extensively. I'm going to start with vision. Let me say a little thing before I come to vision. In my time as a leader, we accomplished many things. You will hear me say time and time and time again, I didn't do it myself. Other people helped me do it, and in fact, other people took the lead on some things. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I am not embarrassed to say this at all. There were people in the organization much smarter than I am in their fields. And they did many wonderful things. So I believe that a wonderful, a good, solid, transformational organization is not all about one person. It's about a lot of people. And that's where the humility part comes in. You have to realize that as the chief executive, and remember I was chief executive for 19 years, as the chief executive, I don't know all the answers. My job was to hire people smarter than I was in their fields who would make wonderful things happen. So I am one to give credit to not 5, 10 people, but maybe hundreds of people. Okay, I'm easy with the credit. But there's one thing that the chief executive or the leader of an organization, even if you're talking about a small department, there's one thing that comes directly from the leader, and that is vision. Vision is a very, very important thing. A vision is something that you believe in your heart and your mind and your head that you can see that other people can't see. And it's your job to articulate that vision, to put flesh on it, and to communicate it. That is uniquely the job of the leader. It has to be an inspiring vision. This is where the boldness comes in. Many years ago, there was an architect. He died in 1912, so it's a long time ago. He used to say, make no little plans. They have no magic to stir people's blood. Now, he was talking of architectural plans, but I have used his phrase to talk about strategic plans, okay? Make no little plans. So when you're articulating your vision, now remember, vision is not the same thing as next year's plans. Next year's plans have to be concrete. We're going to increase by 5%, 8%, 10%, whatever. Those are next year's plans. That's fine. But when you have a broad vision, you have to think 5, 10 years in the future, and you have to be able to articulate it. That plan, I humbly submit to you, should not be a little plan. It should not be an incremental plan. It should not be, we are growing at 2%, let's grow at 3%. It has to be a bold plan. That's where the boldness comes in. So, architect by the name of Daniel Burnham said, make no little plans, and I believe it. Now let me give you some examples from my own. When I became president of what was that time, I became president in 1994. In 1994, I became president of an institution called West Georgia College. It was a college. In America, there's a hierarchy. There are colleges and there are universities. Okay? It's a different hierarchy. So my first task, in my mind, was to create a university from a college. That was my thing. Now, I have to give a little bit of background, so excuse me. So I'm going to give examples from academics and from industry. This first one is from academics. So there were other institutions in the state. In the state of Georgia, I come from the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, there were 35 different universities and colleges. Some of them were colleges, and some of them had been made into universities. Now, the same system, the same broad, have institutions that you are familiar with already. The University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, all of these were universities. There were some others who wanted to be universities. And two of them had actually become from a college to a university, and my college had not. This is before I even set foot in Georgia. So the whole environment was that of intense depression, because those two other places, which were very similar to us, they were very similar. One of them was almost identical to us. They had been made a university for political reasons, and we were not. So the name of that institution, I just mentioned it to you, some of you may be familiar with, was called Valdosta State. Valdosta State had been a college, it had become a university about 2 years before I even got here, and everyone was down in the dumps mentioning Valdosta State, saying it's so similar, why are they a university, why are we not a university? So everywhere I went, I heard that. This is when I first arrived on campus, and in the academic world, there's a start to the academic year. There's, when the fall semester starts somewhere in August or September, that's the start. That's the official start. I arrived in early August, and it was the semester start was still a while away, so I had time to talk with a lot of people. And everyone was mentioning Valdosta State. So in my first speech to the whole faculty, this is the introduction of the new president, this is where you state your vision. So everyone had said, why are we not a university? We are almost as good as Valdosta. What did I do? I didn't mention Valdosta even one time in my speech. Everyone expected me to, saying that they are there, we want to be where they are. I didn't even mention one time. I mentioned only one university, one other university in my speech, and that was Harvard. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are going to do. We are going to find a niche area where we will compete against Harvard. That's what we are going to do. I don't know what it is today, but you and I are going to work together and we are going to play on the same general area as Harvard. And that's the only thing I mentioned about another university. Just a side note, after the speech, a senior faculty member came up to me and said, you know what, we all expected you to talk about Valdosta, you talk about Harvard. He said, half the faculty think you're crazy. And I said, what about the other half? He said, they know that you're crazy. So who mentions Harvard when you're a little college called West Georgia College? I did, and I believe that. That was not fake. I believe that. So let me go fast forward. This is not in chronological order. Fast forward. In my last few years, my last 4 years as president, we beat Harvard 5 times in 4 years. So not only, and we beat it in one area. See, I'm a marketing person. In a marketing field, you don't have to be as big as everyone else. You find an area where you can beat somebody else. We found that niche. It was a niche called academic debate, where the best schools in the country compete head to head, and we were judged 5 times better than Harvard. Now, on the way there, we were already now starting to bang at Harvard's door. So it didn't happen just like a fluke. It was a gradual thing. It took a long time. We were quite there. We beat sometimes they beat us, and so on. But in the last 4 years, we were clearly dominant. We found another area also, because I had said at least one, in something called undergraduate research. In best universities in America, undergraduates do research. And we were judged top in the nation more times than any other university in America. All of these things we accomplished from a little college. But back to that first speech. Talk, make a bold plan. Have something that people can get excited about. Never mind if they think you're crazy. Okay, that's all right. So let me tell you a fluke thing that happened. I've already told you the end of the story several years later, but a fluke thing happened. I made my first speech in September of 1994. In November of 94, which was just a few weeks after, like 5 weeks after my speech, where everyone thought I was crazy, there was a national election in America, and the Democrats who had controlled the House of Representatives yielded power to the Republicans. Now, a very famous Speaker of the House, which is like the leader of the Assembly, had been a former Harvard professor. And the new Speaker was a professor who had been at West Georgia College. So Newsweek did an article, and they did, all about this different change, and they actually published this. They said Harvard is out and West Georgia College is in. And this thing happened 5 weeks after I made my speech. Now, I had nothing to do with this. I'm not claiming credit for it. But I'm saying sometimes when you have a bold vision, you might get lucky. So I cut out this page, and I rubbed it in the face of everyone who said I was crazy. Okay, so because I said Newsweek says this. See, I told you so. Now, we worked hard at it, and we made other things happen. Let me shift to disruption. You all are familiar with the concept of disruption. Disruption is when you change an industry, when you change a field, when you change an industry in many wonderful ways, and I'm going to give you a few examples in a moment, many scary ways. But let me give you a few. I don't have the answer for each of your companies. Let me tell you that up front. If I did, I would be much more rich than I am. I'm not, okay? So I don't have the answer. But I'll give you some ideas from my understanding and from my reading. First of all, it's not about what you are doing. That's the first thing. That's where the humility part comes in. If you think that you have all the answers, you're probably not going to be the disruptor. you're probably going to be the disrupted. So understand that there's a great deal of humility there. How can I improve? How can I do something dramatically better? In fact, the major disruptions that have occurred are not even about one company. It's not about my company doing a better job. This is how you do it. In your industry, whatever your industries are, look at all the companies, all your major competitors, and see what the customer, your ultimate customer, would say are the weaknesses of the whole industry, not about just your company. Certainly study your company. That's a good thing to do. What am I not doing well? That's a very good question to ask to improve my own sales. But this is not that. This is, what is the whole industry not doing well? Okay, that's the question. Again, I'll give you some examples. It's about a spirit of innovation. You've got to be innovative. You've got to think outside the box, different ways. But it's more than that. You've got to have the ability, once that idea comes, you have to have the agility, the action orientation, and the execution. You have to be able to make it happen. If your company is a very hierarchical company, that this is, if you use the phrase, this is the way we've always done it, we are not going to change. If you keep using that phrase, you are not a candidate for being a disruptor, period. You are a candidate for being disrupted. I'm not saying it's going to happen, I'm just saying candidate. So unless you have the ability to change, the agility, if something happens, can I change quickly? Can I adjust to a quick change? Do I have the people who can temporarily leave what they're doing and come into a different way and different way of thinking? Do I have those people? If I don't, let me get them. Because that's the kind of thing we need. Okay, let's give you some examples. So Netflix is an example. So how did we deal with movies in the past? We went and we rented them and we returned them and so on. So the people who were studying the industry said, the one thing that customers hate the most is late fees. You know, okay, I'm a few minutes late, a few hours late, I have to go now and return it. That is such a hassle, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, drive and go and return that, and I don't want to pay the late fees either. So the existing industry would say, well, you got to do one of the two, okay? Either you have to go and exchange the movie, or you have to pay the late fees. It's very simple. Well, it's not. Technology developed that thing that got the customers goat, the customers hated that. Is there a way around it? And of course, Netflix developed that way around it and made that happen. That's a disruption. That's not just one rental company. That's the whole, what do you not like about rental companies, period. Similar thing in ride sharing, Ola and Uber and so on. When I want a taxi, do I get a taxi? Is it expensive? These are the things that you dislike about the industry in general. Now, how can I find a way out of it? Of course, technology helped all these things happen. Without technology, without smartphones, we couldn't have had Uber and Ola. We could not. But the timing was right for that, and it happened. Airbnb, where you can rent someone's home for a little while, and therefore impact the hotel industry. These are disruptions. These are major disruptions. There's another one coming. If you're not familiar with this, you heard it here first. Li-Fi, where the LED lights, instead of these incandescent bulbs, a lot of people now have LED lights. That actually will become, shortly, a way of communicating with data. That will be a data link. Okay? Now, there are always dangers about this. Are you spying on me? What are you doing? You know, that kind of. So there are things to be worked out. But this is a potential source of data communication, wireless data communication, that will be coming. So these are disruptions. These are major industry disruptions. Now let me give you a few examples from my own experience, which are not major industry experiences, but they are smaller disruptions that you might be able to implement within your companies, different ways of doing things. So I'm going to give you a few examples from my own examples. So I worked for a while at Richardson Hindustan. Before it became Procter & Gamble, it was Richardson Hindustan over here in India. I worked at Richardson Hindustan here. And there was a standard thing, the way I was in the marketing operations. Okay, so this is, and the marketing staff and the sales staff always disagreed about targets for next year. The marketing had more ambitious targets, sales had lower targets, obviously, and so there was this disagreement. Now I joined the company, and either a week later or less than a week later, we had our annual conference. That was it just happened that way. So I barely knew where the bathroom was when I went for this sales conference, this sales and marketing conference. I didn't know anything much about the company. And the thing, we went to Goa. We went to Fort Aguada. Goa was the place where we went, and we were discussing different things, and a major fight broke out between the sales and the marketing people. Because there had been some aberrations, one year we had a good monsoon, one year had a bad monsoon, and things like that. How do you take that into account? What will next year be like, and so on? Major, major disagreement. The sales people said we want to take the low years. The marketing people said we want to take the high years as the prediction, and so on. And the whole afternoon went in this argument. Now, the chief executive, at that time it was called managing director at that time, the managing director and the marketing VP were confused as to what to do. So they said, okay, the managing MD turned to me and said, Dr. Sethna, you're the new person over here. Why don't you see if you can do something with this? And I'm astounded, as I said, I don't even know where the bathroom is, basically. I have no idea where things are. But he gave that task to me. So this is something that could never be replicated today. It just couldn't happen. Because we are in Fort Aguada, the year is 1980. This is before the internet, before really personal computing or anything of that kind. And we were struggling with this. So my immediate person who reported to me, very talented young man called Ulhas and I were struggling with this, how to make sense of this. So I said, let's do it in a way that is dispassionate, and let's do it in a way that everyone will accept. So we said, let's use mathematical tools to do it. So there's a mathematical tool called regression analysis, which basically when you have different points like this, it finds the line that best fits the point. So there's a formula for that. Now, we had no computers. Fortunately, I had written a book on management methods. So I sort of created the formulas from scratch, and Ullas had his calculator, and then we actually created a regression line, and we showed that it went through the points, and it was a way to make both the sales and the marketing people happy. We presented it to the chief executive, and he was quite impressed with that. Now that was a minor disruption, but it was a different way of looking at things. Instead of every year just arguing about these things, we have a method now. We plug in the points, and we're going to do this and do that. Now, interestingly, several months after we did this at Fort Aguada, I was helping the new chief executive do something in terms of another disruption at RHL, the introduction of Ayurvedic products and so on, and I was doing some research for him. I went to another company, a very respectable company in Mumbai, in Bombay, and the people over there who were talking to me said, oh, you're the guy who did that. So the other company had actually heard of it, said, we are copying that method in our company. So it was a disruption of sorts, not on the scale of Netflix and Uber, but it changed the way good companies did business. Instead of constant argument, you have a method now, and you do that. Let me talk to you about TMTC. For a while, I worked at Tata Management Training Center. So Tata Management Training Center, of course, does training for the Tata companies, but it also looks occasionally for consulting from outside. So we had a case where people used to come in look at us, look at different other companies, other agencies, even go to IIM Ahmedabad, things like that, and then decide where they were going to give the contract. Now, TMTC had never got one of these contracts. They were good people, very good people, but they had never got it. So I said, an American company was coming in. I said, this is what we are going to do. We are going to impress them with the professionalism and the speed at which we react. So they came to TMTC first. They were going to IIM Ahmedabad. They were going to IIM Calcutta and so on after that. And I said in my mind, this is again vision, I want to impress them so much that I don't want them to even go there. That was my target. And I told my boss that we're going to do this. So this is what we did. So I studied that company, their organization. And in those days, this is pre-computers again. Please understand, we are talking of 1979, 1980. This is no word processors or nothing. Everything is typewritten, okay? So I typed a proposal. I had my secretary type a proposal, leaving clear blanks that I would fill in after their presentation. So I had planned this, that in their presentation, whatever they give, I'm going to fill in these blanks. So the moment they left the room, I rushed to my secretary. She was ready because she knew what I was going to do. And typed those things in. By the time lunch was over, I presented them with a complete proposal with their numbers in it. And it just blew their minds. And they literally said that. We don't need to go anywhere else. If this is what you can deliver, we are fine. That is a disruptive way of doing business in your own organization. Do something different, markedly different. Now I have to tell you, because I was honest with you up front, I'll tell you of my successes and tell you of my failures. This one was a failure. The reason why it was a failure is because my own superiors couldn't handle that. They said, no, we have to check with this, that, and the other. So they withdrew the proposal. These guys are actually saying, we'll give it to you. And the other people around me saying, no, hold it, we need to check with 15 other people. So it was a failure. It didn't materialize. My task, my objective of not having them go elsewhere was not fulfilled, not because of anything we did, but because of the systems. That's what I meant. Remember in the previous slide I said, you've got to have the ability, the agility. You can't just do it with innovation. You have to have the agility, the ability to execute. If you don't have that, it's not going to work. So again, to you, each of you, I say, let me summarize the previous two slides, the previous two topics. Be bold in your vision, and when you are trying to be innovative, make sure you have the parameters around you, the structure around you to be innovative. Because innovation is an idea thing, but if you can't implement that idea, you're gone. Okay? Lever Brothers. I worked for the American headquarters on Park Avenue when I went to America. It was called Lever Brothers at that time. It's now called Unilever. And I worked for them. And again, we had a way of trying to understand what was going on. Lever Brothers is a multinational company, okay? So there are many promotions and things going on in many parts of the world. And that was the way people did business at that time. Now I'm talking of even before that. I'm talking of the year 1974. Again, very few, they had a computer, okay? But we've developed a system that we can plug in things and get results. So I'm giving you these examples to say that you can disrupt even a smaller operation. You don't have to be thinking always of the Netflix and Uber kind of things. By all means, think of those, because that would make you millions and millions and millions. But even without that, you can disrupt things. Finally, I'll give you one that actually did disrupt the industry, and that is from my academic experience. So let me set up this case study, give you a little bit of background. The institution that I went to, which was called West Georgia College, then later became the State University of West Georgia and became the University of West Georgia. Now, many years before I left, we had become a major university, and we were a doctoral granting institution with PhDs and all of that kind of thing. So when I went to West Georgia, there was one interesting thing about it. it was a very typical residential institution. The average age was younger, and a lot of the students were full-time students. So there's an actual measure in America of how full-time, what a full-time college looks like or a university looks like. It's a measure of saying, if I take two numbers, the effective full-time equivalent, meaning if there's one student who takes one course and another student who takes 5 courses, you need 5 of these one-course students to make up that. So this is a full-time equivalent, a student who takes 5 courses. So when I did the ratios, we were very much a full-time institution. About 90%, if I took that ratio, it came to 0.9, 90%. So we were a full-time institution, and then online education started happening. So what were we going to do? How to handle that? Do I change the character of my institution? By that time we were university. Do I change the character of my institution to become an online institution, to do that well, or do I stick with what I know really well? We had a history of being an online. You all face, by the way, if you think this is an academic example, it's not. This is happening in your homes right now, in your offices right now. You do something, you're doing something really well, which is old time. There's something new that's happening. Do you make that shift? Do you make that trade-off? What do you do? Let me tell you, this actually, as I said, I did disrupt the industry by doing this. Let me go fast forward. We became known across the nation and certainly in the state as being the online place. I spent lots of resources to make online education a major priority, and we are known for our magnificent work in online education. But I didn't change the character of the institution. When we already became nationally known for online, that ratio that was already very high at 90% went up to 92 or 93%. So we were doing an exceptional job for the traditional student and for the online student. Sometimes that's possible. So in answer to that dilemma that you face, I'm suggesting to you respectfully that sometimes you can make a shift. Sometimes you can say, you know, I do this really well. Why should I give that up? Can I continue to do my work really well and do that? And if you can do that, that's a great thing. It requires resources. It requires people stretching themselves because they have to think differently. That really disrupted the field. And people come to visit us to find out how on earth we're doing it. Because when they see their online successes, they assume that our ratio is something like 50%. They come and they see 93, 94%, it just blows their mind. How can you do a traditional campus and be so good at online education? Sometimes that's possible. Okay, let me move on. Spent a lot of time in disruption. Okay, communication. That's the next thing. Communication is all about humility. Why? Because there's something in my mind, and I want to convey it to you, convey it to my employees. Okay? You're all facing this. This is very practical. You have to convey a message to your employees, because a motivated employee is exactly what you want. You want that. And you have this great vision, and you have the innovation, and you want to convey it to someone. You don't know what's in that person's mind. You don't know how your words are going to be misinterpreted or interpreted. Communication is about humility. Humility is that I know what's in my mind. I don't know how you're going to hear my words. So what do? I do it again and again. I do repetitions. I ask trusted people of mine to help me improve my message. I bring in my senior people, I bring in a few junior people, and I do a practice presentation. If there was an important presentation to the board, I did a lot of practice presentations. If there was an important memo to be written, I sent a draft to other people. One senior person once came and told me privately, he said, you know, you shouldn't do this. It's a sign of weakness if you show your drafts to other people. I said to him, I respected him very much, but I said to him, no, you're wrong. It's a sign of strength. If I open myself out for criticism, it means it's a sign of strength. It means I'm confident that I can take your criticism and I can change and I can thank you for that and I can be better. It's not a sign of weakness to ask people to help you change what you have in your mind. So this is another practical thing I'm telling you. Any important communication, written or oral, share a draft, make a practice presentation, let people critique you. But, there's a big but. In order to be able to do that, and I'm talking to very, very senior people in this room, in order to be able to do that, you have to already have created a culture where people can tell you that this is not clicking, it's not working. If your culture is that you are God and nobody else can do anything or say anything to you without your hitting them with an axe, it's not going to work. If your culture is that nobody dare tell you anything, you might as well save all the money, buy yourself a big mirror, and when you do something, just shake your head and the person will shake the head back, and you can clap for yourself and the person will clap back, okay? You can save a lot of money by doing that. Please don't do that. Create a culture where people can give you suggestions, respectfully. I took great pains to create the culture so that if I showed a PowerPoint, someone could tell me everything from take out that comma to the last 3 slides just don't work. Just change the last 3 slides. If you don't have that culture, you are hurting yourself. So communication is very, very important because you can have this great vision in your head, you can have this great innovative idea in your head. It won't go anywhere if you can't communicate it, and I promise you, you don't know how other people are receiving this until you ask. So Raj, I'm requesting you in that light, when you hear feedback, I want to know about it because I want to improve this presentation next time.
Sure.
So it's the same thing. I want to know what works for you, I want to know what doesn't work for you, so the next time I do this, I can be better. I want to be better. I always want to improve. Communication requires seeing things from the perspective of others. How can I see things from the perspective of others? Very simple solution. Ask them. Just ask. Ask what is working for you, what is not working for you. All right? Very, very simple solution. But you have the humility, you have to have the humility to do that, and you have to have the humility to learn. Now, I want to be very clear. If someone says, I want you to change this, you don't have to change this. It's your presentation, okay? Someone says, I think you should change it. You think about it, take it seriously, and say, no, I'm going to keep it like this. You don't have to be like a tree that sways everywhere that people change it. Be receptive to feedback and decide. You have to decide. It's your presentation. You don't have to change it. But all I'm saying is be receptive and have the culture where people can say this. Now, in the period of 3 years, if you've never listened to anybody saying anything and you've never changed anything, then people are going to stop talking to you. That's for sure. So you have to be honest with yourself, saying there's something that I can improve, but you don't have to do everything that everyone says. You can't do that. If you're trying to please everyone, it's not going to work. So you give up the idea of pleasing everyone. Not going to be able to please everyone. But you have to be receptive to that. Okay, next point. Model the behavior you wish to see in an organization culture. If you want people to do something, be prepared to do it yourself. That's another part of the humility part, okay? If you get to set the vision, you say, ladies and gentlemen, this is very important to the company. I want everyone to come in at 8:30 in the morning and work till 5:30. You better be there, unless there's a particular meeting or so on. If you drift in at noon or 1 p.m., then after a while people are going to say, it couldn't be very important. Okay, people are learning animals. Okay, we all learn from what we see. If you're not modeling the behavior that you wish to see, it's not going to work. Mahatma Gandhi is reported to have said, be the change you wish to see. Okay, you've got to be the change. Let me give you another practical example, this time from an academic thing. So we have several days in, maybe 3 or 4 days in the whole year, where we invite students who are potentially interested in the institution to come. They come with their parents and their families and so on. They see the campus, they see all the things. And now one of the other things that our campus is known for, we have, by the way, a 645-acre campus. It's a very large campus. It's as big or bigger than some cities. I mean, it's huge. We have our own post office, our own police force, all of this. We had 345 acres. I added another 300 acres to it. So we have a very, very large campus. And it's known as a very beautiful campus. It's green, it's clean, and so on. I mean, it's just, this is also important to us, because when people come to visit the campus, whether they are 50 years old or 70 years old or 17 years old, that makes a difference to them. So one day, at this day that we had all the parents and the students coming in, I talked with all of them as president. I addressed the whole group, like thousands of people. I talked about various academic things that were great at the institution. And then I was going to my car to go to another event, and one of the parents with her son came out, and I didn't know she was watching me, but I saw something on the ground, and I picked it up, some piece of paper someone had thrown. I picked it up, and I looked for a trash can and couldn't find one, so I just held it in my hand. So she asked me, are you the president or the janitor, like the Chaparasi fellow? I said, I'm both. I am both. That's what I am. If I want a clean campus, I have to do that. When I became president, again, in academic institutions in America, there's a pecking order. The senior faculty teach the postgraduate students, doctoral students and master. Junior faculty teach the undergraduate students. That means that the undergraduate students never get the benefit of these brilliant minds, these great professors. So the first thing I did when I became president, in fact, even before that, when I was vice president, I said, I'm going to teach an undergraduate class. And so I started teaching, when I was a vice president at another university, I started teaching undergraduate students. I gave up my postgraduate teaching, and I said, because I can only teach as a senior administrator, only one course. So I said, my one course is going to be undergraduates. To set an example, again, be the change you wish to see. If you think that teaching is important, teach. If you think that picking up kachra is important, pick it up yourself. You know, if you think that a certain culture in your organization is important, you've got to do it yourself. If you want people to come in at 9 o'clock, come in at 9 o'clock yourself. Unless, of course, there's a meeting or you're traveling or something. That's not. This is the kind of thing. You have to model the behavior you wish to be. Okay, if it was good enough for Gandhi, it's good enough for me. I'm going to follow that, and I followed that consistently. This is what we need to do. That's part of humility in that as well. Next point, similar thing, teamwork. It's all about the team. Please understand again, all the good ideas that come from your company are not going to come from your mind, no matter how brilliant you are. You need to hire good people, and you need to enable them and empower them to do it themselves. Hire the right people. That's your job. You have to hire the best people. Those people may be smarter than you. In fact, I hope that they are smarter than you. That's what I always hope for myself. I want to hire people who are really smart. But if you want to motivate them, you've got to say thank you. You've got to applaud people. You've got to have ceremonies to thank people. You have to have events to thank people. You've got to say, great job. You've got to be able to say, I couldn't have done it without you. You've got to have the humility to say that. I can't do this without you. And let me flip one to another thing. I was president, as I said, for 19 years. Every 5 years, I wrote a major article in our newspaper in the town that was entitled, I'll show you, excuse me. I'll have to get out of this for a moment. Don't look at me, someone else did it. Okay, and every year, every 5 years, I wrote the same title, different article, but the same title. Normally you say this when you're trying to deflect blame. It was deliberately provocative. Normally you say this when you say, oh, he did that thing. But I used to do this to deflect praise. So I used to actually list all the people who did those marvelous things, and I said, don't thank me for it. So-and-so did it. This is the kind. You've got to be able to thank people publicly, people who saw their names in the papers, to say that the president is saying that he didn't do it, I did it. That is a motivator. Tomorrow they're going to come to the office charged up and ready to do more for you. Okay? That's the kind of thing that you have. So let me go back to this. We are out of time. I want to finish this off. Okay. Let me skip this because we are out of time. I'm going to leave you this with one concept. This is called the single point of accountability. That's what it means. The single point of accountability. Very useful, practical thing that you can implement tomorrow. Never leave a meeting without designating a single point of accountability for every decision that you have made, every thing that you are planning to do next week or next year. Do not leave the meeting without saying, you are the SPA, you are the SPA for this thing. SPA means you empower that person to move ahead with that. If you do that, don't interfere. Unless some chaos is happening, empower that person, saying, this is very important to us, you need to do it. We implemented that decision, that style of thing, but then you have to empower the person. I had a boss who had been a Fortune 500 chief executive, and he and I worked out these details together. He used to have an expression saying the person who takes the bullet gets to make the decision. Meaning, if you're going to fire that person, if the job is not done, then don't mess with that person. Let that person do a good job and run with it. So that's the SPA. My respectful suggestion to you is, when you have a meeting, when you say, okay, we are going to do this, that, and the other, if everyone is responsible, no one is responsible. Okay? If it's fuzzy who is responsible, it's not going to get done. When you meet next month, you'll have the same topic on your agenda, I promise you. It will not be done. Designate an SPA, and that's what we have. And that's the last major slide. This is what we talked about. I'm sorry it was so rushed, but I welcome questions in the few minutes that we have left.
Before we take questions, it's my pleasure, on behalf of all of...
Wait, let me... For the official photograph. I get excited when I'm talking and I take out my jacket,
So on behalf of everyone who enjoyed your talk, a small token of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My suggestion is that we have all the text. And then the Q&A, keep forward. Those who want to stay can stay. Those who have pressing engagements can leave. It's only fair to everybody. And when we set it a 5 to 6 session, we make it a 5 to 6 session. So I request Mr. Arvind Pradhan to propose the vote. Thanks.
So will you leave your presentation to the camera?
Thank you.
This thing? Yeah, this is on their computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of IMC, I must say that it's a great session that we've had today. Sethna, you were really wonderful.
Thank you.
We talked about transformational leadership, a bold and humble leader, one who has vision, disrupts, innovates, communicates. I would say it was really, really nice, and a lot of takeaways, I'm sure. I can only say thank you once again. Keep coming to IMC and teaching us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anyone has to leave, no offense meant, or no offense taken, but if you want to stay on and have Q&A, I hope you will.
Of course, be happy to.
Excuse me, whoever will be leaving, please submit the feedback forms at the registration desk.
Any mentor, I admire things about that person. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything he did or everything he said, but there are certain things that people do that I admire.
And would you want his style of management, or you would name the man who's brilliant him?
Yeah, I don't know about management. I mean, I don't know anything about his management.
So is he relevant today?
I would hope so. Again, you see, and I want to make this point because I make it to my students. In marketing, there's actually a phenomenon called the halo effect. The halo effect means that if I like something about a product, I tend to like another thing about a product, another thing about a product, and so on. If I dislike it, I dislike everything. That's a human failing. I make an effort to avoid that failing. This is what we do with politicians today, okay? I'm going to deliberately avoid talking about Indian politicians. I don't want to make anyone mad. Let me talk about an American politician. There are people who just absolutely love President Trump. Nothing he can do will affect him. In fact, he himself has said, I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and nobody would change their mind. There are some people who absolutely dislike him and nothing he does is good. I make an effort not to be that kind of person. So when I say I admire Mahatma Gandhi, I admire a lot of things about him. That doesn't mean that everything he did was perfect, according to me. But there are a lot of lessons I can learn, and I can pick the lessons I want to learn. You know, the same thing for Nehru. I have actually been very critical of his socialist economic policies, and I think the world of him for his academic vision, for creating the IITs and things like that. So I can be a total admirer of one thing and a critic of another thing. I don't have a problem with that. So that's why I don't paint with a broad brush. I say, this is great about that person. I want to follow that philosophy.
Thank you, Dr. Sethna. That was really brilliant. And I think what was important was one of those lectures where really there's so much take home, which you can literally,
thank you.
You know about it, you have read about it, you try to implement it, but this really enforces it. So thank you very much. I have only one thing against what you said.
Yes.
And that was that you beat Harvard.
You're a Harvard.
I hold that against you.
Well, the debate program is an undergraduate program, so don't worry.
Okay. Just what are your plans? Are you, now that you are from Georgia, are you still in America? Have you come back to India?
No. I'm a full-time professor. I retired from the presidency, and I became a full-time professor. The board of the whole state, called the Board of Regents, they gave me multiple titles when I retired because they were pleased with the work. So I just now have the title of President Emeritus, which means that people continue to address me as president. I also have a title of Regents Professor, which is a very high title, and then they've named a chair after me. So I'm the first holder of that. So I'm the Beheruz Sethna Distinguished Scholar or something like that. So that's the thing. No, I'm afraid not. Now it's difficult because my children are grown and they are there. My daughter has 2 daughters, so I have 2 granddaughters. My son has a son, so I have a grandson. I already, even in a few weeks here, I miss them a lot. So.
But I just want to add that he comes every summer and spends 10 days in an orphanage here at Lonavala to teach orphans science and understand the fundamentals through experiments. He brings kids and this and that so that they don't understand the theory but actually do things and learn. You won't talk about these things, but he spends his own money and does all that every year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned about disruption. Is there going to be a change of social media, IoT, ML, artificial intelligence,
is there going to be a space for disrupting the disruptive?
Oh, of course, absolutely, 100%. No hesitation on my part to say that. The disruptors will be disrupted. I mean, just look at it this way. Just about a decade ago, India made its mark as being the outsourcing place. It still is very good in outsourcing, but now India is itself outsourcing. So this will continue to happen. Okay, disruptors will be disrupted. You can take absolute, I have no hesitation in saying that. Good question, thank you.
Dr.
Yes.
Sethna, my name is Chandrasekhar. Thank you very much for this brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
Businesses operate in a particular ecosystem, whether it's in the US or
Correct,
India.
correct.
And then you have disruptive technologies.
Yes,
And therefore, there is the emergence of a new ecosystem.
yes.
And I believe the old ecosystem and the new ecosystem are actually at war with each other. And therefore, there's a dilemma for corporates and for companies. How do they adapt themselves to disruptive technologies? My sense is I'm able to imagine three scenarios really. One is, of course, disruptive innovation, which will disrupt everything. You'll be the disruptor, otherwise you'll be disrupted.
Yes.
Fine. But there is also the possibility of robust coexistence
Yes,
between the old ecosystem and the new
I agree.
ecosystem, and also the possibility of robust resilience. There are certain corporates, certain companies which can actually remain resilient in spite of certain disruptions
Correct.
which are coming in from outside. Therefore,
I have no argument with
robust
your analysis.
resilience, robust coexistence is a possibility.
Absolutely.
Is my understanding right?
No argument at all. But the key thing is, are you still meeting the needs of a substantial customer base? If that's true, you're doing fine. And you have to be worried about one thing. Will that be true tomorrow? That's the only thing you have to worry about.
So the sustainability of
Correct.
robust resilience
Correct.
or robust
Correct. Correct.
Okay, I understand.
See,
Thank you.
sometimes things happen to disrupt that you are powerless. Like, for example, my family was very modest means over here when I was a child in here. Extremely, very, very modest means. When I went to IIT, they sacrificed so much to buy me the best slide rule because their assumption was that slide rule I will use for another 40 years. Okay, that was the assumption. Well, I didn't. You know what happened to slide rules, right? So they sacrificed and bought this great Aristo slide rule from abroad, and in 5-10 years it was gone. I mean, it was useless. So there are some things that we have to worry about tomorrow. What is going to happen? Yes.
So my name is Nikita. Thank you so much for making it so personal.
Sure.
I'm studying public policy and I was working in higher education in the British Council.
Yes.
So I just want to know, are there any specific traits in terms of academic leadership or leadership in higher education? And what are the specific gaps? Because we have such a gap in India. And what is it that we can do for developing the pipeline?
Of course, there are several, but one thing I would mention that's probably more true of America than anywhere else is this idea that the faculty are empowered. Faculty are very powerful and empowered people in America, in American higher education. An administrator can't create a program, for example. And sometimes you want to, and maybe it's the right thing to do. I tried. I mean, tell you. I believe in this faculty governance, this faculty power. I had a doctoral program in every college, except for the business school. Business school faculty didn't want a doctoral program. And as president, I can't create it. So I had to go through them. And they said no. I had to live with it. So the other ones have doctoral programs, and the business school does not. That's the way it works. So the faculty have a lot of power. You have to understand that. You have to understand that. You have to work with it. And you try with persuasion, and that's it. So it's, again, the communication is important. Persuasion is important. But at the end of the day, you have to realize the structure of that industry. That's one of those things.
How would you compare the educational system in India vis-a-vis USA, which you have got any experience of it? And what suggestions you give to improve?
I think that the agility is much more, even in spite of what I said about the faculty. Now I'm a faculty member, okay, I understand that. What I'm trying to say is that in USA can move much faster. When you see an opportunity, you can go for it. You can do things. There's much more power to. There's still some regulation. I'm not saying it's completely on your. As president of the university, assuming that the faculty wanted a program and I was able to persuade them to have a program, I still had to ask for some permissions. But typically these things happen in, for me, takes a long time, like 3 months. But by Indian standards, that's not a long time. So yeah, there's a lot of agility, much more agility in America. And that's something that we might want to consider for India as well.
A lot of foreign universities have started coming to India.
Yes, 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 of course. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sethna, for this insightful presentation. My name is Janitor. So I would like to ask you a question regarding the disruption that is happening in the academic world. Now, with the advent of online technologies, so many courses are offered for free and of great quality. The students can go and learn from. Now, if that is going to be the case few years down the line, how is offline education in universities and academics going to get impacted? And where do you see the future of education?
I continue to believe, and of course, I'm not predicting 50 years from now. I'm predicting 10 years from now. I think 10 years from now, there will still be both. I think that there is a great value to online education. As I told you, I've already spent millions in resources and that, and have been successful. But it's not for everyone. There is still a vast swath of students. In India, I know them, okay? I know students in India. I come every year with my American students. We participate in Indian competitions over here. So I know the Indian student. I'm not looking from there. There's a large group of Indian students who is comfortable with the traditional model of education. There are some people, especially of younger ages, like first year, second year, third year college students, that are not ready for that online education, that you do it on your own and there's no class and there's no, completely on your, they're not ready for that. There's some people who are not even prepared for that. They still need for me to hold their hand and to walk through them, okay, you didn't understand, let me help you, let me, show, I don't mean of this guy, okay, this guy's brilliant, but I mean another student, so help and so on. So that kind of thing, okay? So yes, I believe that there's still a need for face-to-face education. And I believe that that need will continue at least for 10 years. I'll tell you why I say this. When I became president in 1994, Peter Drucker, who's a very famous name, Peter Drucker had said, I think 10 years before that the traditional college in America will cease to exist in 30 years. Okay? That was, I think he made that prediction in the mid-1980s. More than 30 years have gone by, and it's pretty much the same. Of course, a few colleges have failed and so on, but it's pretty much the same. There is a group, again, it's back to the customer. What does the customer want? There's a group of customers that wants to be at home, working at midnight, and taking the courses. There's a group of customers who say, I like the interaction in college. I like the competitions. I like the sports. I like the games. I like these things. This is what I like. The customer, it's all about the customer. And those two groups will continue to exist for the foreseeable future. I'm not, as I said, not predicting 50 years from now. Raj Yuma. Yes, sir. Hello.
My question is, how do you see this compared to the old Indian Gurukul system?
The Gurukul system. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that, so I can't answer that. What is the Gurukul system? Can somebody help me? What is?
A system where a student is dedicated.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. That of course exists. That exists in the senior, in the PhD. That's like a PhD student working with a single person and so on. It's fine. I mean, it exists. I don't think you can make that to scale today. The reason it changed is because you can't scale that. You can't do that with the millions of students, the lakhs of students that we have just in Bombay, for example, Mumbai. How can we do that with this? So it's not physically possible. Clearly, if you have an individual mentor, The quality of learning is much better, but we don't have the resources to do that. That's my understanding. Okay.
It's a little personal question. I just want your view on that. When you see new parents, like who just got those kids are in the first standard, second standard, and they have an option of having the kids studying abroad or having a base study in India. What would you prefer and what would you recommend to them?
I think the quality of Indian education for me was great. Okay, I went to do a PhD. I finished my bachelor's degree here with Raj at IIT, finished my master's with Raj again at IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Bombay, IIM Ahmedabad. And I wanted to be a professor. You have to have a PhD to be a professor. At that time, there were really no PhD programs to speak of in all of India, in business, okay? IIM Ahmedabad had something called an FPA program, Fellow of Business Administration. And there was one student in the program. He had just, I think the second one had just come in. But there was only one student who was, he hadn't even finished yet. But I applied. As I said, my parents couldn't afford to send me, okay? So very, very modest means over here. So I applied for the FBA program. My faculty, who admitted me, they gave me admission. And they said, we don't know what to do with you because you've already taken the advanced. See, Mr. Jain, who was the first FBA, had come in from outside of IIM, so he could take the advanced courses. I was an internal product of IIM. I'd taken already some advanced marketing. So they didn't know what to do with me. So they themselves, they said, look, all of them had American PhDs. So they said, we'll write you recommendation letters. You really do need to go abroad. So I went kind of reluctantly abroad because there was nothing more that I could do here. But if you work hard and you get into a good place in India, that's a great place. It's a wonderful. And then if you need to go after that, I think that's fine. I'm not convinced that in school that you need to go to America. Of course, people do it. If you're wealthy enough, you can do it. And the only reason I was able to go to Columbia, I got my PhD at Columbia University, was they gave me a scholarship because we would not have been able to afford it. So it's a matter of, if you're wealthy and you're rich and you want to send your children, that's up to you. But I don't think that you lose by studying in India. But yes, at some point you might want to go to a top brand name school.
The pace of India is better than abroad.
The pace?
The primary, the way they teach us in India is stronger than in US.
Again, same answer that I gave to that gentleman here. There are things about Indian education that are very good.
Okay.
There are things that are not. Okay. So I won't paint anyone with a broad brush. I learned a lot in my school. I went to St. Xavier's School right here in Mumbai. I thought it was fine. But there are some things that are much better in America. One of the things that is much better is the ability to interact with your professors. Even at IIT, now Raj may have had a different experience, but in my department, which was different from his, it was a very hierarchical top-down system. Even IIT, questions were not particularly encouraged in my department, okay, with my professor. I've got another IIT friend over here. He might have a different experience. I did not have a very positive professor interaction experience. I think that America in general is superior in that thing because there's an interaction. You can ask a question, you can get an answer, you can go get some extra help and so on. So there are pros and cons.
Good. So, okay, let's take 2 more questions. 1, 2, and 3.
Hi, I'm Barkha Zatani from Barkha's Branding. Just listening to your fantastic presentation just made me introspect that I'm basically a logo designer. My company's name is Barkha's Branding, and we have 9 offices all over India with an expertise for logos.
Wonderful.
What we do. So I usually hire my staff not on when I see the resume, I at least bother about the education. I just see the passion and the ambition of that person and I hire. So I just seek your guidance. Is that the right approach or should I actually...
There is no question that passion makes a big difference. If you're passionate, if you're excited about what you're doing, it makes a difference. In today's world, though, I think you want some technical skills. You want to be assured that the person has the ability to create these things. I mean, if you hire me for your logo things, even if I'm passionate, I'm not going to be helpful to you because I'm useless at certain things. So you have to have the background. You have to have the technical ability to make it work. Of course, you can learn that. That's fine. And if you had a choice between the two, yes, I would go for the enthusiasm because I can learn the other stuff. You send me to a 3-month program or even a 3-week program and I'll come back able to do something for you. Typically, you can't teach passion. So if you had a choice between the two, I suppose you're doing the right thing, but I would not ignore the technical background. But there's another thing. Let me tell you another thing. If you do well in your college work, it's not just the marks that are important, but the culture you've had to create to do well. That is important. So for me, I do believe in the American system, for example, someone with an A is distinctly superior to that with a C, okay? Not just because of the A and the C, but it's tough to get an A. And so I want someone who's able to do that work. I'm a great believer in the value of hard work. I work very hard. I'm going to be 70 years old next month, okay? And I work like a dog. I mean, I work till 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm answering questions from the students. I really work hard. I am a great respecter of hard work. So,
you sent Dr. Sethna a mail within 3 minutes.
don't believe that 3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I do that. My students actually sometimes lay bets with each other saying, let's see how quickly Dr. Sethna responds. This is after midnight and 2 a.m. So, yeah, but I'm a respecter of hard work. So I'm saying, for me, the A grade is a surrogate measure to see, is this person capable of hard work? It's not just the A. There are 2 things in the A that are buried that I respect. One is, yes, the person has understood the material. The second thing is, that person is able to do hard work. If you're a goof-off, I really don't want you. I want someone committed. I really want someone committed. And I put that in my course syllabus to my students. I said, if I, at the age of almost 70, can work so hard, I am not sympathetic for you if you don't work hard. I'm just not. If you're working hard, I'll do anything to make you succeed.
So you've done so much in, considering lower amount of time. So is there any advice in terms of time management that you can share with us?
I'm the worst time manager in the whole world. My day lasts for 20 hours. How can I give you any advice on time management? I'm the worst person in the whole world you can ask about time management. I am 0. I can't manage my time at all. I just keep working.
My next question was work-life balance, but I guess you answered that.
I did answer that. I get an F grade in work-life balance. So no, there are certain things I can talk about, and there are certain things I'm just a complete dabu on that. And this is one of those.
Last question.
My name is Seshna.
Hi.
This is a broad question, but I was wondering, as a leader, right, what would your approach be towards friction within the team or friction with the leader?
Sorry, I missed that. Wait, what?
Friction within the team or
Friction.
with the leader, conflict with the team,
Yes.
What would your approach be towards that? What sort of an attitude would you
You don't have to absorb the values of everyone on your team. You don't have to be a carbon copy of the people on your team. But you have to be able to work with them to create a joint product that will make you proud. So I believe that. So if the friction is non-work related, it's, forget about it. If it's work related, then we have to talk and work it out. And I encourage people to talk and work it out. And sometimes it helps if there's a third person, uninvolved person involved. I'm going to throw this out for the general public, although it was your question. I created a system many years ago at my previous university and now recreated it at my current university called an ombudsperson. An ombudsperson is a person who has no line authority. He's not your boss or she's not your boss. She has no power over you. She will just, if Raj and I are having a problem, we will together go with her and she'll listen to Raj, listen to me, help us talk through it, and help us resolve our conflicts. without any hierarchy, and she will not report this conversation to our boss. So you talk in perfect confidence. That's a good culture to have. It helps sometimes to reduce the level of conflict. So that's something you might want to consider. There are actual websites on ombuds that you can look at. They're very. Sorry? HR, yes. Yes, but you see, and you're right, HR, that sometimes is an HR responsibility. The only hesitation I have, because we have an HR office too, the only hesitation I have is sometimes HR has power. And it helps us, if two of us are having a problem, to go to a non-power person, so that nobody's going to tell my boss anything. HR has a duty, they keep files and they keep records and they make notes in the records. I don't want that. I mean, if it comes to that, that's fine. If I steal something or something, it has to be in the record, yes. But if I'm having a conflict, then let me go to someone without power, who is an expert in this sort of thing, who will help us work it out. Within the organization, yes.
We have banking ombudsman here.
You do? Okay.
All banks.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good thing to have in other organizations also. Thank you all very much. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you so much.